All the loud that's allowed, oh, dear. Sarafina Dinkle is in trouble again. It's big trouble because her parents are calling her by her full name instead of just Dink. Dink's an inventor, like her parents. And early this morning, Dink tested a new invention. She tiptoed to the window and took a deep breath because her invention was a loud noise. And this noise went, Yodeling. Dink has purple shoulder-length hair with pointy ears sticky through it. She wears a pink all-in-one suit and is leaning out of her window, making a loud noise.
She thought.
What should I call this noise? Her family, who had just been startled awake, knew exactly what to call it. Against the law. Dink's parents quietly but sternly explained that her noise had no place in their flat. No place on the whole planet. For this was the tiny, crowded, very quiet planet of Husharoon, where Dink lives with her 5 parents and 12 siblings. How tiny is Husharoon? Begin walking in that direction after breakfast, and you'll be back where you started before dinner, having traveled around the entire globe. A planet covered in colorful doom houses. People are out and about. Earth is visible in the sky. But don't shout. Ahoy, I'm back. Because there's no shouting on Husharoon. Ever. Everyone whispers. Even Husharoonian babies have cries that sound like the tinkling of little bells. It wasn't always like this. With oodles of Husharoonians living on such a tiny planet, there used to be lots of elbows smushed into noses and strangers' feet jabbing your bottom when you tried to sit. Everyone was so rude and so loud that finally the High Court of Husharoon made new laws. No yelling, no shrieking, no silly noises. And because there just wasn't room, no running, no skipping, and for goodness sake, no twirling. Husharoon residents walk around a busy street. The houses are colorful dooms, and there are ale purple mountains behind. Everyone wears all-in-one suits in different colors. Earth is visible in the sky. Dink understood the laws, but it was hard. Husharoon was so crowded, there was no place for Dink to get rid of her wiggles. And Dink had more wiggles than anybody. After Dink apologized for noise-making, her parents forgave her in gentle voices. Now they had to get ready for work and school. Dink poured some Hushnut milk on her Hush Flakes. While she ate, she stared at her parents' latest invention, a pair of little twinkling balls called hearings, which allow you to understand any language in the universe. Dink wondered if she might be able to talk to the bumble tree down the street. Dink looks at a shelf which has 2 hearings on. The hearings are small earplug-shaped objects with white stripes. Dink, said her parents, don't be late for school. Your bubble bus is already glowing. Though everything on Husharoon is nearby, Husharoonians travel by bubble bus. It's a personal bubble. When not in use, they gently float in the corner. When it's time to go, just slip inside and pop. You're where you want to be. Dink's 5 parents stand around a floating bluish bubble with a hole in it.
Dink looks happily at it. Pop.
Pop, pop.
Pop.
Dink's family headed off to work and school. Dink was alone. Maybe, thought Dink, I could bring those hearings to school for show and tell. Dink clambered onto a stool, reaching towards the twinkling orbs on the shelf. No sooner were they in her grasp when the stool slipped.
Crash.
She fell to the floor, and her bowl of flakes flew straight into her bubble bus.
Fizz.
Crackle. The bubble smoked and sparked. Dink hoped the bubble still worked. She had to get to school. She squeezed into the bubble, and pop. Dink stepped out of the bubble and instantly sunk up to her neck in something white, fluffy, and freezing. Dink sticks out of a pile of snow up to her neck. Her hands are in the air, and she looks shocked. This was not school. There was no one and nothing around. Just flat, white ground, with a super tall white triangle in the distance. Thousands of small, cold, white things were falling from the sky. One landed on her skin. Then it disappeared. Back home, outside, and inside were always the same temperature, medium. Here it was so cold, her cheeks felt funny. And she could make fog with her breath. But now Dink felt someone else's breath. Warm, damp air smelling like nuts, and old socks blew on the back of her neck. She turned around, and there, facing her, was a very tall something with long, gangly legs, an enormous nose, and what looked like a huge spiky hat. Dink would have been scared except the creature had kind and curious eyes. It grunted a wonderfully loud, nose-blowing sort of sound. Dink looks confused at a large brown moose. Snowy mountains are behind them. I wish I knew what you were trying to say, said Dink.
Oh.
Hold on. She fished the hearings out of her pocket and attached one to her ear. Can I stick this on you? The creature looked intrigued as Dink fastened the other hearing on its ear.
There.
Can you understand me? This is so interesting, said the shaggy beast. You don't look like anything I've seen before. You either, said Dink. The creature looked surprised. You've never seen a moose? A moose? Dink shook her head. And I thought I knew all the creatures on Husharoon. Husha what? This is Husharoon, isn't it? Asked Dink. This is Earth, said the moose. Earth. Dink was confused. But to be polite, she introduced herself. I'm Dink. I'm Donk, the moose answered. Dink and Donk talking to each other. They both have a hearing in their ears. You're very loud, Donk, admired Dink. You haven't heard anything yet, said Donk, who then boomed a honking gargle, stranger and louder than any sound Dink had ever heard. Brilliant, gushed Dink. I invented a noise today, but it's nowhere near as good. I'll be the judge of that, said Donk, eager to hear Dink's noise. Dink took a deep breath. I won't get in trouble, will I? Trouble, said Donk. For being too loud? The louder, the better, laughed Donk. Deciding to trust the moose, Dink again filled her lungs. Wait, Donk interrupted. Follow me. Let's do this right. Dink runs behind Donk, who is galloping across the snow. A mountain is behind them. Donk galumphing ahead, and Dink ran after him. On the way, she learned all the white stuff was snow, and the tall triangle ahead was a mountain. As soon as they reached it, Donk said, Check this out. He then let loose a hustling bellow, which echoed all over the canyon. Dink's eyes widened. Yup, said Donk. Best place for noise-making. Your turn. For the first time in her life, Dink delivered a noise at full volume. Yodeling, yodeling, yodeling. Dink and Dink stand on the top of a mountain. Dink is jumping in the air, making a loud noise. Donk was amazed. You can yodel? I've always wanted to yodel. Dink was happy to learn her invention had a name. But Dink and Donk couldn't be amazed and happy for long. Something was rumbling high up on the mountain. Oh, said Donk. Your yodel has started an avalanche. What? Asked Dink. That. Donk pointed with his hoof as an enormous wave of snow barreled toward them. Run, yelled Donk. And they did. But Donk's tall legs were better for running in the snow than Dink's short ones. Quick. Jump on my back and hold on. Dink clutched tightly to Donk's furry neck as Donk galloped at full speed. A huge wave of snow roared behind them, getting nearer. Dink sits on Donk's back as they run away from a large wave of snow which is behind them. I'm running. Out of breath, panted Donk, collapsing. But Donk had mostly outrun the avalanche. Though it buried them in snow, it only just barely covered their heads. Donk and Dink poked up into the open air. That was scary, said Donk. Looking at each other, they said at the same time, but so much fun, but so much fun. They laughed like loons until Dink caught sight of her bubble bus glowing. Both Dink and Donk are sat waist deep in snow. They are shrugging their arms and laughing. Oh, I have to get back to Husharoon. Come back, won't you? Asked Donk with hopeful eyes. Dink promised she would. And Donk promised to practice yodeling. As Dink entered the bubble bus, she called out to Donk, I really can't wait. And pop. The bubble bus was gone. The end.